This is Ryan and Victoria Cole. Thank you for listening to Needed Conversations. We're in a great series. It's about spicy sex, and I'm excited about it. What about you, honey?
Yeah, very excited. We started this conversation last week, just kind of an introduction, but we're excited to go deeper with you guys and help you guys rediscover, I guess, or reignite your marriage and make sure that you guys are staying on fire for one another.
Yeah, so while you're listening to this, why don't you just hit that share button right now, whether you're listening or watching, and also make sure you're subscribed and follow us on Instagram and where you're listening to this podcast. This is Needed Conversations, but our marriage ministry is at More Most Forever on Instagram. You want to follow that channel because there's a lot of inspirational stuff. There's a lot of wisdom, dating tips. So whether you're married or dating, we've got some stuff for you to help you find lasting love.
Yes, it's so important to be connected to wisdom, and I think that that's what God has given us, and it's not to toot our horn, but it's something that we have dedicated our life to. We kind of stumbled upon that even before we were getting engaged. We were dating, and just the way God orchestrated everything, we kind of fell into this ministry, so to speak, where we were marrying people and coaching couples, and we are so excited to be able to share this wisdom with you guys and allowing us to speak into your marriage as well. So thanks for joining us for today's session.
Yeah, and anytime you want to text us about anything related to purpose, dating, or marriage, why don't you just pick up your phone and dial 864-428-7131. It's in the bio of all of our Instagrams and stuff at More Most and Forever. We've also got a Facebook page as well that we just launched, kind of continuing this inspiration that we've started on Instagram. We just crossed over 3,000 followers on Instagram.
Woo-hoo.
So thank you for following us. I know there's a lot of new people, a lot of fresh faces, and we've got a lot of free resources for you. And anytime you have a question, even if it's about marriage, you're in the middle of an argument or something with your spouse and you're like, let's text Ryan and Victoria. It's very discreet. Just text us.
We are the ones who are reading it, so we will definitely respond to you guys in a timely manner.
And we'll give you the wisdom that you need. And hey, all things marriage and dating, go to moremostforever.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where you'll find out about the upcoming events that we have, and we have a lot. Books and resources. There's some free webinars on there. There's a lot of free educational materials on there. But we have a lot of events coming up. We have some for those who are going to be married, some premarital workshops in downtown Greenville, South Carolina that you want to be a part of. It's the premarital workshop. That's on our website, moremostandforever.com. So that's one in March and one in April. And there's limited space. We're only accepting 7 couples per session. And we're going to be spending the day with you. It's going to be like a day date. We're going to be having a teaching, but it's going to be fun and interactive. And it's in the most beautiful city, I believe, in the United States. It's in the middle of downtown Greenville. So it's going to be a good time. So if you are getting married soon, you're engaged, make sure you invest in your marriage in as much as you're investing in the wedding. Hey, and you said something earlier too about parents.
Yeah, I say if parents are listening or you know somebody that's getting married, why don't you give them this gift of premarital counseling session? This is not intimidating, where it's not going to be one-on-one. It's going to be a group setting. And listen, this is a gift that will last them a lifetime. The nuggets that we have received before we got married is something that we carry on through this day. And even the littlest things that those people that mentored us may not have thought that might have made such a big impact was instrumental in our marriage. So why don't you give them a lasting gift, not a pot or a pan, excuse me, but something that will really carry them through those challenging times and really that will sustain them and help them to maintain that forever or sustain that forever.
Yeah, and it's a decision that you make every single day.
Yes.
It's not just that one moment standing at the altar that we spend an average of $30,000 leading up to that moment, right? but it's everything that happens after I do, which holds all the weight and all of the value. When everybody has gone, they've eaten their free meal, they've thrown the confetti or raised up their sparkler, and then you're left with your marriage that you have to cultivate. And so we want to give you the tools you need to experience lasting love. Not just with that, but we have other events, because if you're married already and maybe you need some help, you need a tune-up, there's events for you too. Again, go to moremostforever.com. It's very easy. You'll see we're having a speaking tour. We're doing other workshops, so you want to be a part. Connect now. Don't wait, okay? But tonight's conversation is surrounding our latest book called Spicy Sex, just released in paperback. Some of you may have gotten it in the ebook form, which is still available, but also paperback is now available too. We're going to have this at our events as well so that you can pick it up. But it's looking at sex from a lot of different angles, because most of the time when people are talking about sex, they're talking about the physical part only. But really, the secret to unlocking pleasure physically and having the most satisfying sex is all of the other stuff that leads up to sex. It's a 3-part experience. You're engaging your body, the physical, you're engaging your soul, your mind, your will, you're yielding to that other person, and then it engages your spirit. And sex is prophetic in nature, and it really solidifies this partnership between you and your spouse as you both are focused on a common purpose or a common mission, as we like to say, building your marriage upon a mission. That's one of the workshops we have coming up. But if you and your spouse decide to be intentional about your relationship, those results are going to show up in the bedroom. And I keep pointing backwards because the bedrooms are over there. But nevertheless.
Well, yeah, today's topic, we wanted to talk about how to add flavor to your marriage and not have that bland flavor. We have all tasted those meals that taste bland. They don't have enough salt, they don't have enough pepper, maybe not enough herbs. And when you're not intentional in really putting something together, you kind of throw things together, it doesn't really taste good. And for us, we really like the whole, food experience. We eat every day. We eat breakfast and lunch and dinner. It's something that we constantly do. It's our lifestyle. So it's the same thing with marriage, that it's not something that you just do one time, at the altar. You say, I do, and everything is dandy and everything's going to be great. It's something that you're going to have to learn together to pursue, so that you guys are able to, so to speak, create those tasty meals together. And again, like Ryan said, it's not just that one-time experience or one ingredient. It's all ingredients coming together to make that nice meal. So we kind of wanted to give you guys 7 pointers tonight to help you add some flavor into your marriage.
Right, because if you're not careful, marriage can become bland really quick.
Yes, for sure.
And we thought about this as we were, in the kitchen, just cooking around, and I love a good meal.
Yes.
When I was growing up as a kid,
Ryan is a foodie.
yes, my parents called me a professional eater-outer. Because our family, we love to go out to eat. We love to go to special restaurants. We would go to Disney World. One of the main reasons we would go to Disney was to eat all of the good food, especially in Epcot, if you've ever been to all of the different countries that they have represented there, and all of the wonderful food from France to Mexico to Japan, and all of those wonderful dynamic flavors, which is a reflection of their culture. Right? And your marriage is a reflection of who you are.
That's good.
That's one thing I want to start off with you realizing, is that marriage is the biggest mirror that you'll ever look in. It's a magnifying glass on who you already are. Most people say going into marriage, after a while and it seems like you're drifting apart, you say, well, they changed, or, they're not the person I thought they were. Well, in fact, what you're seeing is the person that they were all along, but you were just blinded to it because of your infatuation. Right? You allowed your flesh to get in the way of seeing who that person was, who they really were behind all of the smoke in the mirrors. But now you're looking and seeing them for who they are, but you're also seeing the dirt and the ugliness in who you are as well. And that's uncomfortable. And that makes for this dynamic in the relationship to sometimes be a little tense because you're seeing the worst in each other in as much as you saw the best in them while you were dating. And so if you don't make intentional effort to stir something up in your relationship, it's going to become bland very quick, right? So I love a good meal, but a good meal takes time. A good meal takes preparation. You can have a gift like my wife, which she really can. Step into the cabinet in our kitchen, and whatever ingredients we have, she pulls something together, and it's very delicious. But I'm the type of person that cooking for me is an experience in as much as eating is. So I want to cook a specific dish. I go to the grocery store, buy these specific ingredients, make sure I have all of the right spices, and I put a lot of effort into it, a lot of time, a lot of sweat equity, so that when I take that bite, that I taste the reward of the work behind what that tastes like as well, which makes the food taste even better as well, surprisingly so. But in your sex life, a lot of times the emphasis is on how to get your body to respond better. And we're talking about the physiological part of it, but we're not talking about the psychological part of it or the spiritual part of it, which, your body responds to what's going on in your soul and your spirit. And if your soul is and your spirits are not aligned as a couple, then your body is not going to respond in the best way possible. Or it's going to be short and fleeting and just, not as pleasurable as it could be, which is why we did write this book, Spicy Sex, because each one of these letters in the word spicy represents a different aspect of sex, from it being satisfying. It's a partnership, intimacy, comfort, yielding to one another. And so the first point we want to get to tonight in talking about adding spice to your relationship is just the simple fact of learning how to be present with your spouse.
Yes, and that means just to really set aside the distractions. We're so easily distracted by social media. Like that's our, or even our phones, period. Like when we come home, that's a way that a lot of us relax, whether it's TV or whether it's our iPad or whether it's our phone. And so whenever our spouse is talking to us, we're distracted by whatever it is that we're looking at. And then we're not present, with our children, we're not present seeing what's actually going on in our household. Does the trash need to be taken out?
Right.
Do the dishes need to be washed? And all of those things you cannot blame, for what's happening in the bedroom when you're not participating on what's going on outside the bedroom. And that means helping your spouse, and it's not to say that it's a man's problem is the fact that he's distracted, because women can be distracted too. I know that we can be distracted by our tasks, by our kids. A lot of women right now are entrepreneurs, and that's great, but it's so many hats. You have to find the time to make sure that you are present with that person whenever you do come home.
I think that we're distracted in different ways. I think a man's distraction outside of the bedroom leads to a woman's distraction inside of the bedroom.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to say that again. A man's distraction outside of the bedroom leads to a woman's distraction inside of the bedroom. That means if he is on his phone playing video games, nonchalant about what's going on in his home, then when he is in the bedroom trying to get his wife to warm up to him when it comes to sex, she's going to be thinking about all of the things that's on her list that's still not done yet. Dishes in the sink, kids at school, or issues with homework, or, the fact that there's a leaky faucet, or the car needs an oil change, or whatever. The fact, if you could take the opportunity when you're outside of the bedroom to step in and make sure things are a little bit more in order, trust me, when you get into the bedroom, her mind is going to be more at ease, because a woman is a multitasker, and a man is able to focus. Now, these are large generalizations. I'm not saying all men are this way or all women are this way, but if you look at a sliding scale, more men tend to be more focus oriented. and women tend to be better able to multitask. And so that also leads a woman to be more overwhelmed because she has so many tasks on her mind at once. And it also leads a woman to bring all challenges in her life into one pot, whereas a man's able to separate that out a little bit better. So really, when a man goes into a bedroom, his focus becomes sharp, and all he is thinking about is that woman and that act, right? He's thinking about his wife, and he's in that place, and every hormone and all of the blood in his body is moving in that direction. A woman is not necessarily like that. That is just one of many things that is on her list. And yes, it's just a point on her list sometimes, and that's a real fact. But if you can help ease the burden outside of the bedroom, it will help her to be more engaged in the bedroom. So you be present here, and trust me, she will be present there.
Yes, for sure. And that's one of the things that we broke down in our book, Spicy Sex, is that we started first with satisfaction, but you have to go through the other aspects of it as well to understand the full totality of what sex entails and how you can better help your spouse to focus in those areas. And the fact that sex is actually not only for satisfaction, but it has so many different aspects into it. So when you discover that, I think you learn to be less distracted and more focused into the important tasks that you need to be a part of, like in your home, with your children, with your wife, so that you guys are both kind of carrying that equal load.
Yeah. The second spice we want to add to your relationship tonight is being authentic and transparent with one another. And that goes a long way. Spouses tend to keep secrets from one another. And that's for many reasons, whether that be shame or whether that's you're just not wanting to confront a bad situation or to make your spouse feel inferior if they have inferiority complexes or if they are less secure about who they are. But at the end of the day, withholding information or withholding your honest and authentic self is never going to lead to satisfaction in the bedroom.
Yes.
The more open and vulnerable and transparent you can be with one another, the more real and raw that experience in sex is going to be.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning when people first get married, I think that that's a very touchy thing, and a lot of times we kind of are more careful in regards to that. And I think later on we get so frustrated because we have not been honest that we become very forceful in the way we present ourselves, and that comes across very aggressive. So then
Because there is a level of resentment.
yes, and so you have to make sure that you learn how to approach that person. And you at the beginning you might have to kind of troubleshoot and figure out, well, if I say this, maybe talk to your spouse and say, well, how would you respond if I say this? And maybe they will be honest with you and say, when you say that this way or at this time, I'm not listening, or I'm being hurt because this is my past and my trauma. So sometimes it takes time to work through those things. But again, that all plays into being honest and transparent. It's not going to happen overnight for you to really discover each other's ways of thinking. So that's why it's so important at the very beginning so that you don't leave room for assumptions.
Yeah, because if you are offended by something your spouse says or does, and you're not letting that be known in the moment, it's only going to build up into this list of grievances that you have toward that person. And you're going to be thinking about it when you're having sex. You're going to be thinking about it all throughout the day. You've got to be open and honest about why certain things irritate you.
Right.
And how you grew up, that's a big part of it. Your expectations going into the relationship. And let's face it, you can only go so far in the dating process in terms
Yes.
of peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak. All of us have layers. We have layers in terms of our lifestyle choices, what our preferences and likes are, but we have layers to our experiences and some traumas that we've endured. And so we have to address that and be open and honest about it.
Yeah, and it kind of seeps into our point number 3, which is be an active listener. And what we mean by that is listening to not to respond, but to actually understand where that person is coming from. And again, like we've said before, it's going to take time for us to understand why that person thinks the way they think, why they do what they do, because it's going to take time to really open up. A lot of times we don't even know why we respond the way we do. I think sometimes your spouse is very instrumental in even opening up those places of trauma and hurt and say, wow, I'm noticing there's like this trend of your responses of why you're responding a certain way. And it could be from that trauma that you told me that happened to you when you were a child. And your spouse can be very instrumental in helping you overcome that when they understand that that's why you're coming, where you're coming from. But that doesn't mean that you settle in that. That means that you allow God to heal those places of hurt and for you to really start changing in the way you respond to your spouse, because you cannot project that trauma that you have experienced in the past onto your spouse. It's unfair because it wasn't their fault. So, just making sure that you are an active listener. Make sure that you listen to really understand what they're telling you instead of just listening. So I'm going to be prepared to just shoot out my ammunition, so to speak.
And so many of us are put in these positions every single day, even outside of our marriage. Like we're on Zoom calls and we have to be presentable, or we're in a meeting and, on social media, and just this culture that we have developed where you have to be camera ready at all times, or at least put a filter over it, right? So we can also bring that into our marriage, whereas we're looking to give a good response or the response that they're looking for versus actually listening to hear what they have to say.
That's so
Whenever
good.
you're listening just to respond, you're going to be cherry picking what you need out of what they say to match the information you already have to give back, or the pre-populated response that you're going to give because of laziness. But you have to put and make an intentional effort to put aside all of those preconceived notions, all of that presentation mentality, and listen to them for what they're actually saying, not through the lens of your trauma or your hurt or your pain, or your past experiences and other relationships and imposing that upon them, but listen to what they actually said. Most conflicts with couples when it comes to communication isn't about what each other is saying. And a lot of times I find that couples agree more than they disagree. But where the disagreement comes in is in how they communicated it, right? And they heard it in a different way. And if you're in an argument and somebody said, but you said such and such, but I didn't mean that.
Yes.
I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I meant. Or no, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. How many of you spouses out there wish you had a recorder on your phone when, your spouse was saying something so you could play it back to them? But a lot of times we have to be honest with ourselves and say, maybe I heard it through a lens of trauma, or maybe I heard it with a particular bias because I expect them to be a certain way because other people were a certain way to me, right? These things show up especially for people who have been cheated on in past relationships, and now they're imposing that lack of trust upon their current, partner. And so oftentimes they're hearing or seeing things and they're remembering how that played into a trauma or a betrayal with a previous partner. And so they're automatically assuming because this person did that they have to be just like the person that hurt me. When you're just listening through ears that are coated in trauma, and you have to allow the Holy Spirit to pull that up out of you so that you can really listen and hear your spouse for what they're really saying and not what you think that they're saying or what they're trying to say. And we impose that. And I think it's important to repeat back after you hear your spouse say something to you and say, so is what you're saying such and such and such and such, and giving them an opportunity to say back to you, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, or no, that's not what I'm saying. I don't know, sometimes when we have conversations, I'm like, how did you even get that out of what I just said? And vice versa. She says the same thing.
Yeah, very true.
Did you have something to add to that?
No,
You acted like you were going to jump in.
no, that was all good.
Yeah.
I,
Go ahead.
yeah, those were all good things. But I was going to jump into point number 4, which is serving one another. I know we talked a lot about communicating with one another, but also serving one another can be such an instrumental thing where you step into marriage, you understand that you are here to submit to one another. And that means that you are not here to take, you're here to give. And I think if both parties come with that kind of mentality, how much better will your marriage be when you constantly are putting your spouse before yourself? And the scripture that kind of came to my mind is, with Paul, when I think we struggle with so much with keeping our titles to ourselves. We always look for affirmation outside of our house, outside of our marriage, because people give that to us, and maybe because people don't really know who we are. And so sometimes our spouse may feel like, you may feel like your spouse doesn't respect you, even with all your titles and all the things that you are, you have become, whether you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or you're a doctor. But I love the scripture where Paul says, Paul, a servant first. He didn't say, I am the apostle. He said, I am the servant. And even in the Bible, it talks throughout that you who are the greatest should be the ones who are serving. And so if you are in the place of feeling like, wow, I'm so great and I have, all these titles, I shouldn't be doing these lower jobs, then God is really going to refine your character, because that's not truly what we are called here to fulfill on the earth. We are here to serve others, to show love, and first and foremost, display that in our homes. We're so quickly to do that outside of our home. We give the best to the world, and then when we come home, we're like, we're spent, and we don't have nothing else to give to our spouse.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that in the common household, we invite people over, and that's when we bring out the good plates, right?
So true.
But you have your most valuable relationship with you every single day, and you could be treating them in such a way. I've heard many in the previous generation, women who just have this servant mentality when it comes to, providing a meal for their husband. And they refuse to serve their husband food on a paper plate. They're just not going to do it. They're going to go and they're going to pull out the best china and the best, flatware, and they're going to serve the best to their husband. Why would they give the guest, who is making no vested interest in them, why would they give a guest the best and their husband the worst? And I'll say this to husbands as well. We should be the prime example of servant leadership in our home. Where we go, the family follows. We are the head of the household. And our leadership should be rooted in acts of service. And in my wife in particular, that's her love language, acts of service. And so that's even more so relevant in our household. And so I have to learn every single day new ways that I can serve and keep that fresh as well, whether that be making sure that I'm participating in the household activities, or whether that means that I'm doing special projects for her with her in mind. And here's the caveat when it comes to serving. You don't serve to get something in return. You serve with no preconceived ideals of what you might get in return. But here is the great part about serving is that you will always receive a return. The fastest way to a person's heart is to serve them. If you have a spouse with a hard heart or a bitter heart, the fastest way is to start serving them, and not just clean the kitchen one time and she should get over the fact that I did such and such, right? Or, go out and get flowers the one time. No, this should be a common practice that you initiate in your day-to-day life, that you're serving your wife unconditionally, no conditions attached, but you just want to make sure she is taken care of. In fact, the Bible speaks of the role of a husband. It says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church, who gave himself for her. And then it says to take care of her and wash her with the water of the word. Serve her, lay down your life for her. And trust me, that's going to lead to better results in the bedroom as well. But you're not doing that so that you'll get good sex, right? You're doing that because you want to be respectful of their humanity and you want to grow closer to them. And inevitably, that will lead to good sex. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think one other thing that I would say is that we serve others as unto the Lord. I think that's our first motive that we should check in our hearts, that we are, like Ryan said, we're not giving to receive something in return. But if you're serving so many times and you're like complaining that, within a week or 2 weeks, they're not responding at all, like Ryan said, that your spouse could have a hard heart, period. But when you come with a mindset of, Lord, I am doing this as unto the Lord, then God is going to start softening the heart of your spouse. Whatever challenges that they're going through, whatever trauma that they're going through, that love will soften their hearts to be able to receive what you have to share with them.
Yeah, and that's why that movie, if you watched it, Fireproof, was so powerful. I know Christian movies have a bad rap, but in terms of the content, like, it was this man who had basically abandoned his wife, even though they were living in the same household. He had stopped serving her, caring about her, and he decided to do this thing called the Love Dare. And where every single day there was something that he would add to the day before of things that he would do to serve his wife. And he did it long term, unconditionally, to build a culture within himself of, this is going to be how I live my life, and not just, I'm doing this because I want my wife to stop with a bad attitude, or I want her to forgive me for something. It's not about earning forgiveness. It's about realizing you're already forgiven in Christ, but your lifestyle should be that of serving your wife. So we've got several more points here, or spices, to add to your marriage, which goes along with serving and what I just said about being consistent in that serving and not just doing it one time to get a certain response. Is be reliable.
Yes.
Be a person of your word. Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no, and let your commitments stand. If you give your spouse a commitment, you should live up to that commitment, and there should be nothing that stands in the way of you fulfilling that commitment to your spouse unless they relieve you of it. And I don't care if it's the President of the United States who calls you and asks you to do something, but if you already have etched on your calendar that you've committed to your spouse to do a certain thing, you should live up to that commitment unless your spouse releases you. I forgot. There's this story that's coming to my mind about a man who, basically was got a call from the President of the United States, and his wife called him simultaneously, and he put the president on hold and said, "Hold on just a minute. That's my wife calling." And he answered it, and the person standing with him is like, "Are you crazy? That's the President of the United States." But he had more honor for his wife than a person who held a position of political leadership. And I just think that's so profound. And you know what? I'm sure it made a profound impact on the president too, to say,
wow,
dang,
yes.
Yeah, I'll put my wife first.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Number 6 is a good spice, is learning to be an encourager of your spouse. And this means also learning how to speak their love language, right?
Yeah.
And encouraging them in the way that they are going to receive it. For me, that means words of affirmation, or what's my other love language? Touch.
Yeah, touch.
But for Victoria, again, it's acts of service.
Yeah, and we naturally incline to love a person through our love language because that's the way we feel loved. And so we naturally feel like if we do these things, like for me, mine is acts of service. So if I'm constantly doing these things, I'm thinking, this person feels loved because I am prepping a meal. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm taking care of the house. But it's almost like it's flying over the head. It's not to say that he's not seeing those things, but that's not his love language. So I have to be intentional about making sure that I speak his love language, which is words of affirmation and, physical touch, and making sure that I'm being present and, recognize that that's his love language and that I'm giving what he needs instead of oh, that's my love language, and I'm going to love him with my love language. And that's hard for people because we are naturally inclined to love a person the way we love to be loved.
Yeah, and that shows up in the bedroom as well, right? I could give my wife all of the words of affirmation all day long. You're beautiful. I love you. You have the most beautiful eyes, hair. I could walk by her and touch the small of her back or whatever, and she's gonna respond to that a little bit. But what she's gonna respond to more is me showing up and doing acts of service and making sure the house is in order before we go to bed and doing special things along the way. That's going to show up more for her than those other things, and vice versa. My wife tends to do really extravagant acts of service. She builds things for me and she has these projects which I love. But at the end of the day, what I need to hear is, physical touch and words of affirmation. And so, learn to be an encourager for your spouse, but in the way that they're going to receive it. Finally, number 7 is be a person of prayer. Learn how to pray for your spouse. We did an entire challenge called the Praying Your I Do's Challenge. You can actually go on our website if you're married, and you can do this 3-day challenge yourself. Actually, was it 4 days? It might have been
It might
4
have been
days.
4 days,
Yes.
yeah.
But all of our prayer scripts are there that helps you to pray. Just go to moremostforever.com and you'll see Praying Your I Do's. Just click it, sign up. You'll get those teachings and the prayers and all of that. So, but being a person of prayer for your spouse means that you're keeping them on your mind at all times, that you have extra care and concern for them. And not only pray for them throughout the day, but send them an encouraging text or send them a sexy text. Send them any text, leave them a voice note, do something random, write a physical note. Those things go a long way. Those are little deposits that add up to big reserves, little deposits that add up to big reserves. We think one big deposit is what it's going to take to lead to more satisfying sex. But really, what leads to more satisfying sex is the little things along the way. And that includes prayer. It doesn't mean you have to spend an hour in prayer for your spouse every single day, but it means that throughout the day, that you're thinking about them enough to say a prayer for them or ask the Holy Spirit to reveal what may be going on in their life so that you may come home in a better mindset and you'll be prepared for a spouse that has had a bad day and be able to show up with encouragement and love in a way that if you weren't thinking about them or praying about them, you wouldn't be able to do and show up in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to praying too, just even laying your hands on your spouse, it just does wonders, especially for men. I think that's so significant for a woman to feel prayers of their man over them, speaking over them. And it's almost like this protective force that a wife feels. And so, for me, experiencing that my husband prays for me is so much greater than any physical thing that he can do for me, whether it's flowers or chocolates or whatever, because I know that's something that's lasting, that's going to sustain us. Or seeing him pray for our children, that's something that's instilling this culture in them. So it's very important to do that. To pray with your household, make it a habit, not something that's passing. And we're so quick to go share, gossip with our friends or our in-laws or whoever and start talking about our spouse and put them in a negative light versus really getting down with God and saying, Holy Spirit, like, I'm dealing with this issue. How do I address it? And allowing God to, challenge you, because sometimes it could be your issue. It could be a problem that you are dealing with, and God is really refining your character. So instead of going to outside sources and talking from your perspective and putting your husband or your wife in a bad light into the public, you are actually bringing it to the Lord and allowing God to give you the strategy that you need to be able to help you work this out together.
Yeah, we put a post on our Instagram today that got a lot of response, and it says, "I want the kind of marriage that makes our kids want to get married." And what you said was important too, like you watching me pray for the kids. It means a lot, but I think in general, what we don't realize about sex and the dimension of sex, which we talk about in this book, which is partnership and procreation, that having sex and procreating isn't just about having physical children, but
Yes.
it's about a partnership that you create with your spouse where you create a culture in your home, a culture that is full of values that reflect God's kingdom: love, joy, peace, kindness, long suffering, self control. Those kind of qualities that your children can look at you as a united couple and learn from. So, I'm sure you might have heard this, but you're teaching your children what is acceptable in their future spouse every single day.
That's so good.
As they are observing your marriage, you're showing them, men, you're showing those little girls what she should deem as an appropriate behavior from a man towards her in the future and what would be acceptable in a future husband. That's a heavy load that we carry as parents. So tonight, I hope you've gotten a lot from this conversation. If you're listening to this on podcast, we do have the video on YouTube as well. But we've talked about these 7 different spices to add to your marriage. And it's all pointing to our book, Spicy Sex, that if you hadn't gotten yet, I want you to do so right now. You can get the ebook, download it right now, or you can get a physical copy. Just go to moremostforever.com. And also, before we leave, I do want to let you know we are a nonprofit ministry. We've dedicated our lives to this, but we need your support. It's because of partners that we're able to have this equipment and provide an excellent experience for you and to be able to produce these resources. It costs a lot of money to format, for graphic design, for printing of books, to provide resources, counseling couples who may not have the resources to pay for a session. But, we're counseling couples every single day, whether that be through our text line or in person, face to face. And your support as a partner means the world to us. It means that we don't have to worry about how the bills are going to be taken care of. And we're not just talking about our bills. We are people who are wise to building wealth. This isn't just about supporting us, although that's part of it, but it's about all of the bills that come with running a ministry, the administrative costs, the production costs, everything that I mentioned. And we want to do so much more. Our dream is to have a retreat center one day. And because of your support, that's going to happen. And we're just believing for it. We're going to dream for it, a place where you can come with your family and learn the values of God's kingdom together. And so would you give? Go to moremostforever.com. A little donate tab at the bottom should pop up. But it's going to be an important seed that you're investing not just in your relationship, but into the next generation, because these books and resources are going to live far beyond us. But we want to thank you guys for joining us for this live recording of our podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Final words, honey?
Yeah, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and also give us a review. That's a great way. It's a free way that you can also help us spread the word on our podcast, Needed Conversations. We have over 70 episodes that you can listen to. We have some great topics that we already covered. I personally love to listen to podcasts in the morning or in the evening or when I'm doing laundry. It's just a great resource, a free resource to you guys to help support you guys and make sure that you guys have good wisdom to build your family, to build your marriage, to build good, healthy relationships. So make sure you do that for us to help us spread the word.
Well, we hope to see you at an event very soon. Again, moremostforever.com, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Needed Conversations.
Thanks
God
for
bless.
joining us.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye-bye.